Do we all have PTSD? Are we now overly skeptical of even those we have put our faith in to know better and do better? Dr. Mary Talley Bowden is here to discuss that, especially after some head-scratching posts by RFK Jr. And we have economist Steve Beeman joining later to dissect the state of the economy. The news you need to know, but with solutions and hope. This is Get Free with Kristi Leigh.
It's Friday night. A local doctor's privileges pulled after a series of tweets about COVID-19 vaccines and treatments. Houston Methodist is calling Dr. Mary Bowden's opinions dangerous and full of misinformation.
Methodist says that Dr. Mary Bowden recently joined the staff there and as of today has never admitted a patient there. Tonight she's been suspended for, quote, spreading dangerous misinformation which is not based in science.
Dr. Mary Bowden had been suspended for her comments on vaccines.
Now they have suspended her hospital privileges because they say she is spreading dangerous information about COVID treatments.
This after she was temporarily suspended for advising against vaccines for children.
Last fall, Houston Methodist suspended Dr. Mary Bowden, claiming that she spread misinformation on social media.
Dr. Mary Bowden is facing 3 anonymous complaints for her stance on the use of ivermectin to treat COVID-19.
Spreading what they call, quote, dangerous and false information.
Now, that is a montage put together from Unpack the Lies, a documentary. That's not even the whole thing. It almost kind of makes light of what Dr. Mary Talley Bowden has been through with that fun music in the background, but I'm sure it didn't feel fun as she was going through it, but we're going to get to talk to her about that. Dr. Mary Talley Bowden is the founder of Americans for Health Freedom. She's kept over 6,000 patients out of the hospital that had COVID-19. She sued the FDA for spreading misinformation and she won. So who's the spreader of misinformation now? Dr. Mary Talley Bowden, she joins me now. We have so much to discuss. Thanks for being with me. You know, it showed in that video, you doing that presser. That's about when I started talking to you, is when that was going on. And it's been a wild ride ever since. Like I said, that video there almost makes it seem like a fun ride, but I'm sure it hasn't been one, right?
Yeah, I get emotional seeing that video because it really was a big deal to me. I mean, I'm basically mom at the time. I was sort of a part-time doctor. I really didn't see any of that coming. And when Methodist announced on Twitter that I was spreading dangerous misinformation and that my privileges were suspended, I mean, I had CNN, Washington Post coming after me. I had people from Australia screaming at me. I was scared to go to the grocery store. I mean, I was scared to go to my kids' sporting events. It was wild. And even this morning, I got a death threat. So it still keeps going. It's really unbelievable.
It's got to be a really weird position to be in. I mean, and I've on a small scale experienced some of it. You have such polarizing attitudes from people. You have the people that despise you and hate you and slander you. And then at that same time, you have people saying, keep going. We love you. We support you. You're a hero. So it's a wild position to be in, right?
Right. It's a different kind of fame because you don't know when you're walking out on the street, who's going to throw something at you and who's going to come up and shake your hand. It's really weird. But luckily, out and about, no one's done anything, rude or mean or threatening to me. And a lot of people have come up to me and been very kind. So I appreciate that. But yeah, it's a bizarre feeling. Because I just didn't see any of that coming ever.
Yeah, the decisions in the course of this have been polarizing as well. They slandered you, said you were spreading dangerous misinformation, not based in science, as if science was a thing during the COVID-19 pandemic, where they were making, let's go 6 feet apart. Let's go with masks, that will do nothing to protect against this small virus. So, I mean, it's not like anything that they were doing was based in science, but they throw those slanders out at you, accused you of that, but you were able to win in a lawsuit against the FDA for essentially slandering ivermectin, is my understanding. At the same time, you did have to pay hefty fines. Kind of explain what you've been through there and the wins and losses.
Yeah, the FDA, that was a huge win. That was great. They basically launched a smear campaign against ivermectin. They branded it as a medication only for horses. And subsequently, it was really hard for me to treat patients because patients were fearful. I had pharmacists who refused to fill my prescriptions. And it really interfered with the doctor-patient relationship. And that's what our lawsuit was about, because the FDA, their role is to approve medications and move on. They're not supposed to tell doctors how to use medications. They're not supposed to tell patients what they can take and what they can't for certain diseases. So when they went online and said, stop it, you're not a horse, you're not a cow, seriously, y'all stop it, that was a directive that they're not allowed to do. So we sued them over that, and it was a lengthy court battle. We ended up having to appeal to the Fifth Circuit, but we eventually won, and they were forced to take down the misinformation that they posted. Unfortunately, though, the brand still lives on, and I've really been pushing for the FDA to come out and make a statement to correct the record on ivermectin, because the misconceptions are still there. Losses, I sued Methodist twice. I lost both of those lawsuits, and then I'm still fighting the medical board. So I was turned to the medical board over ivermectin. I've received 3 complaints over ivermectin. 2 of them were eventually dismissed. But the third one is still standing. And I have a hearing at the end of April to determine my punishment. It's been 3.5 years of waiting for this hearing. And it's cost me, the legal fees are over $260,000. And that, my lawyers went pro bono almost a year ago. So it's been crazy.
That is insane, and really speaks to the lawfare, and also, this problem that we have in our society of anytime you come up against a hospital, you are, David versus Goliath. It's just so unfair, the basically unlimited resources they have to attack you. And you have, it's like a hope and a prayer, the other way around. But one thing I love about you, Dr. Mary Bowden, is you, as well as me, when we started speaking on our convictions, although mine had to do with journalism and yours had to do with the medical healthcare field, you kind of got pushed into this corner of like, well, whether you were or not, you're now a conservative, you're now a Trump supporter, you're now a MAHA. And one thing I appreciate about you is that you don't play along. Some people that get pushed into that sector, if you will, they live it up, they play it up, and then they don't criticize. They don't stick to their integrity that they had at the beginning. You're not afraid to speak up when you see things within the movement you've been pushed into that you're not happy with. And really, I want to talk about that today. You've obviously been a warrior when it comes to health freedom. We were both very excited about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and his involvement in MAHA and speaking against the vaccines. And now so many of his posts are, like I said at the beginning, head scratchers, like, what are you doing? And so maybe speak to that. You're navigating in this world, and what you've thought of his posts so far.
Yeah, I pulled out one of his books this morning, The Vax versus Unvax, just to remind myself who Robert Kennedy is. And I do believe in his heart that he is on our side, but it's perplexing what the messaging that's being sent out. So I'm not privy to any conversations going on behind closed doors, so we can only take what we see at face value, although, a lot of people are making excuses and trying to justify what's going on. And, to me, it's the messaging reminds me a little bit of the heavy-handed messaging we got during COVID in terms of, well, you need to go out and get that vaccine, or, the vaccine is the best way to prevent disease. And, Kennedy for us was the one that was going to challenge the mainstream narratives, to challenge the gospel according to vaccines. And bring transparency, and I feel like that's not really happening. I mean, not enough has been said about these measles cases, because when you dig into the cases, it sounds like these children suffered from medical malpractice rather than lack of vaccination. So, it's I'm not going full force attack on him, but I'm also just taking what he says at face value and critiquing that.
Yeah, I mean, some like to come way over here and say, "Oh, he's playing 5D chess and all this stuff," and I mean, it's disappointing that there's always an excuse. Perhaps he does have to play a game, if you will, to make progress. But yeah, I think that we can only go on what we're seeing, and it is extremely disappointing. I read the real Fauci book that RFK Jr. wrote. And so things are not aligning with what he said in the past and what he's saying now, especially not giving the full story when it comes to these measles deaths and the factors involved there. I did notice that there was a measles story out that you didn't see in the legacy media, and I believe you shared it as well, that there was a measles vaccine death in a previously healthy baby after leukemia developing. Apparently, the infant had received one dose of the MMR, Merck, following her 1-year well child visit, and then experienced fevers. Leukemia was diagnosed, and basically, the measles vaccine contributed to a fatal strain that invaded the brain and killed the child. So, what are you able to tell me about that?
I don't know any details on that case at all, but measles is a live virus vaccine. So it's not supposed to be given to pregnant women or immunocompromised. And there are risks to it. And, I have talked to parents whose children suffered severe permanent neurological injury following these MMR shots. And that's typically not disclosed to parents. And that's what we need. Is there needs to be transparency about the risk. And if the parent wants to take that risk, fine. But the parent has to first be aware of that risk. And most parents are not aware of those risks. And that's the problem that I see.
And beyond the MMR, you have the mRNA shots. I'm shocked that people are still even bothering to get these after I think a good job was done on giving a healthy dose of fear about taking this experimental vaccine. And it seems like just about anyone knows someone that has been injured. So it's hard to believe that people are not only continuing to get these mRNA shots, but it really is all about the kids. You also shared that 25,000 kids per day, 6 months to 17 years are receiving these shots.
Yes, it's alarming. And if you look at which states where the uptake is the highest, it matches the people that voted for Biden. It's really, truly unbelievable. It's, an exact match to the election outcome. And so this has really become a politicized medical intervention. I don't know that we've ever seen anything like this with anything else when you think about it, right? That you're more likely, that your risk of getting these mRNA shots is directly correlated with who you voted for president.
Yeah, it's really sad state of affairs. And you also have been trying to lead efforts to get these shots banned in the interest of public safety. How are those efforts going?
Well, Minnesota just filed a bill. Shane Meekland, who has been a medical freedom warrior in Minnesota, of all places, he just filed a bill to ban the mRNA shots, and that's the 7th state that has a bill on file. Idaho, their legislation, their session just ended, although they had a bill on there, so that one died. Texas has a bill. New York has a bill, which is hard to believe. Kentucky has a bill. So, there are a few states pushing, we have more states pushing to make ivermectin over the counter, which is interesting. And actually some recent success with Arkansas did pass their bill to make ivermectin over the counter.
Now, when it comes to your next medical board, you having to see them and be on the seat for advocating for ivermectin. As we learn more about ivermectin, as we see states taking action to make it over the counter, does any of that help your case when you expect to have them judge whether you acted in accordance or not?
No, because they found a way to nail me without the ivermectin issue. They claim it has nothing to do with ivermectin, but it's when they deposed me, they mentioned ivermectin 88 times, but they claim this has nothing to do with ivermectin. They're saying that I sent a nurse to the hospital without having hospital privileges. And my counter to that is we were involved in a lawsuit. The wife was suing the hospital, and the court was ordered to grant me temporary privileges. And so I was relying on the lawyers to give me the green light, and they told me we were good to go. And so we sent the nurse. She shows up, she's greeted by the police, she's greeted by the hospital administrator, and she leaves. And that was the end of it. It was not a big scene, but they've really, they're going to nail me on, sending her without having privileges. But there is a bill in the Texas Senate, which would really help me. It's SB 2422, and it would exonerate all physicians that were disciplined or have been charged with misconduct during the pandemic related to budesonide, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and masks. And we would reimburse us for our legal fees. So that gives me hope. I mean, I don't know if it will actually pass, but it at least shows that there are some people in the Texas Senate who are on our side.
Yes, that's very encouraging. And I would encourage anyone that sees this to make sure that they're calling and giving their support for that, because that's what it's going to ultimately take, is all of us trying to support those who've really put themselves out there, like yourself. And speaking of putting yourself out there, you put yourself out there even more on Tucker, who has a huge audience. What were your takeaways from that experience?
Oh, he's exactly what you imagine he's like off camera. He was very forthright, very funny, very nice. I was extremely nervous, and he put me at ease. So I was very appreciative of that.
Excellent. And you are doing a lot of your own things too. I don't know how you do it all as a mother myself, and trying to do what little I can. I don't know how you're doing the doctor thing and the social media thing and all of that. But you also have a Substack. Tell me what the latest is that you're working on there.
Substack's harder to get to because, like the time constraints. I post a lot of things. So I do have a podcast once a week on America Out Loud Radio. It's 4:00 Central Time. And with each podcast, I write a short article. So I tend to link those two. So the article from my podcast goes onto my Substack. But yeah, Substack doesn't get enough attention. It should, but I do. It's other than X, it's my second source of information that I spew out.
Yes. And again, we know that we can trust you because you're not afraid to criticize either side or camp, or, you just stick to the truth and your convictions. And we appreciate that. Is there anything else that we didn't discuss that you want to make sure you update people on?
Yeah, I think we covered it, but we just got to keep fighting. And it's especially now because I thought our fight would be over at this point, but clearly it's not. And pandemic was a war, and, we need a treaty, and we need to just keep fighting. And definitely we got to get these shots off the market before any more children get harmed.
Yeah, I mean, it is just absolutely, it's like not even real when you read about these things. I just can't imagine it, especially just the evilness of it all. I mean, playing on parents' fears, pressuring them to do something that they think is going to help their child, and in the end, could be deadly. I mean, it's hard to truly wrap your mind around the gravity of how evil that is. So we all need to get involved. It's number one for the kids, for the protection of our next generation. Well, Dr. Mary Leigh Bowden, thank you so much for joining me again. Keep us updated on anything that we can do to support you.
Thanks, Kristi.
You bet. And one thing you can do is support this show. You can always go to mypillow.com/KL, use promo code KL, and you can get a bunch of products that you know you can love and appreciate, like their towels, their sheets, and so much more. Free shipping right now, no minimum purchase. Just take advantage of that. Again, go to mypillow.com/KL. And we're going to be doing an economy health check next. We talked about health and MAHA and how we all need to make sure we stay involved and hold their feet to the fire for some real change. But we are going to cover the economic health that we have right now, which, might seem a little bit wild because it's kind of up and down, but we'll be checking into that with an economist. But first, again, another way to support the show is support yourself. Make sure that you are diversified across asset classes. You can go to KristiOilBoom.com. Watch this. The world's smartest investors aren't buying oil stocks. They're collecting mailbox money from oil royalties instead. I'm talking about passive income that shows up month after month, starting with as little as $25. Visit KristiOilBoom.com to discover how to tap into monthly royalty checks from America's most productive oil basin. You don't need to be wealthy. You just need a regular brokerage account. That's KristiOilBoom.com to learn how you could start collecting oil royalty checks every month. All right, welcome back. Earlier today, there was a press briefing largely focused in on the tariffs, and especially those that are the large majority of them going into effect 12:01 a.m., technically tomorrow, but basically tonight, in just a few hours. So that was centralized. The media has been doing its darndest to paint this with a brush of doomsday headlines. They even said that the market was going to completely tank. We didn't see that happen yet. I mean, I guess it's always a possibility, but all the predictions that we were going to have a Black Monday, well, that came and went. And in fact, Tuesday morning, we saw everything bouncing back. So everyone's going to have a different opinion on this, but we want to bring in our guest today, an economist who has started his own podcast to give us some insight, Steve Beeman, and he joins me now. Thank you for joining me.
No, it's my pleasure. It's nice to be on with you and talk about these things that are so disruptive to everybody and a lot of fear going around.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the most fundamental thing, Steve, right, is that you can tell people time and time again, don't make decisions about your finances, don't make decisions about your investments out of emotion, out of fear, but people do it anyway, right?
Absolutely. It's what drives fear and greed drive everything in the markets. You've got people like Warren Buffett who will look at this and say, stock's on sale, it's a buying opportunity. Other people, especially in the world of the perma bears, are going to say, see, the world's falling and we told you it was going to happen. I think none of us really know. So much of this market is dependent on what happens hour to hour and day to day with our trading partners. If you get good news out of Europe or good news out of any of them, the markets run up. If you get bad news out of one of them, it runs down. So it's tough to play the news game in the markets, and people should just be as patient as they can.
And that's what's been disturbing is, I mean, it borders on market manipulation that the legacy media, the mainstream media all gets together and it promotes fear when it comes to, oh, this is tariff tragedy. And I mean, because it's like they know what they're doing. They're trying to manipulate the market. They're trying and hoping that the market reacts poorly so they can say, look, what Trump is doing is failing. It's also predictable.
I think you give them too much credit. I don't know that they're that smart, but I think, when you look back historically, we saw this kind of behavior in the 2008 thing, right? We saw it at the COVID thing where it starts to run bad. The day traders, the high frequency guys get on board and that just runs this stuff up and down so fast you can't stand it. And at the end of the day, nothing really changed. We're still looking fundamentally at is the U.S. economy and the global economy going to be strong? More than just the markets, you have the employment reports that are coming out relatively positive. There's good news there. I think this idea of the capital infusion the Trump administration has put into the U.S., somewhere between $3 and $6 trillion over the next couple of years, That is a massive stimulus for the private economy. I think the tax cuts he's talking about and the deregulation are massively stimulating for the private economy. So we're really down to just see what can be done to renegotiate the trade relationships between the U.S. and the rest of the world. As has been said time and time again, we have been so generous since World War II, by intent originally, but we can't afford it anymore with $36 trillion in debt, $2 trillion deficits, and $1 trillion trade deficit. We can't keep doing this to our children and our grandchildren.
Yeah, and it seems that Trump wanted to set the stage on this and kind of encourage other countries to follow suit with the visit of Benjamin Netanyahu and his announcement that Israel would be eliminating their trade deficit with the U.S. One, do you think that we'll see that actually come to fruition and happen? And two, on the other side of the coin, we have this massive threat from China and Trump coming back strong. Those are like the major, I think, things that we're looking at in seeing what direction this could go. Is that right? Or do you have a different
I think you're hitting it. I think right now we need to be pushing for, and I think the administration is, getting the Western countries to come together, the European nations, Canada, the U.S., those countries to come together and just drop trade barriers. A free trade zone across that segment of the world would be enormous. If that happens, I think you'll see China capitulate pretty quickly. If it doesn't, and China can get a wedge between Europe and the United States, they'll push it with everything they've got. For 10 years, many of us have been saying China's not our friend. They don't have to be our enemy, but they're certainly not our friend. And I think this is showing that once again. Their tariffs are not going to get dropped. And the government in China doesn't care about its people. We have to remember that. In our country, we have things called elections and other things. They don't have to worry about that. So they can suffer some pain in the near term for what they see as long-term Chinese gain. I think that we had no choice but to do this. I don't like to say that because I'm a free trader at heart, but I think this is a time maybe this had to be done. And I think the idea of relocating things like semiconductors back to the U.S. is strategically smart and from a national security standpoint, absolutely necessary.
And can you kind of break that down, explain that a little bit further? Because some were saying like, yeah, I mean, China was hit most aggressively, not even reciprocally. Like if you added it all up, it was going to be 54%. I mean, China is saying it's economic bullying is how they put it. What is the rationale for hitting them so hard? Can you still call it reciprocal?
There's no question it's reciprocal. People have to understand when we do business in China, it's not just tariffs that they put on us. They put regulations on our companies that are not sustainable. They flat out steal your intellectual property, and that's been going on for years. They have historically and continue to manipulate their currency to give an advantage to Chinese manufacturers. But the problem they have is the Chinese economy isn't very strong right now fundamentally. They've built that economy on continued real estate building, and without population growth, they're not going to see that play out in a profitable way. And they have the opposite problem, of course, of a population decline. So I think China's in trouble, and this may be what they see as their last stand. But going back to the semiconductors, what we don't want to see is China empowered to think they can move on Taiwan, because that would be devastating to the global economy.
Speaking of other countries, there is this matter of the universal 10% tariff on all U.S. trading partners. There's a question that was interesting in the press conference earlier today that someone asked, well, what about, Madagascar or other countries that suffer poverty? Why are they getting hit just the same as others? What would you say is the rationale for coming to the table against countries that, are maybe already struggling?
Well, and you have the country that was comprised of penguins, I think. So there are some problems, I think, with the way this was done. I think it maybe was done a little too broadly. But I think the administration overall is saying, in general, the U.S. is tired of being the patsy here. We're not going to play it anymore. We are deeply in debt. And I think they're looking even at these smaller countries saying, we can't afford to support you anymore. We can't afford to bail you out. we have to start bailing ourselves out, because it's like the airplane. You deal with your own mask before you deal with anybody else's. And I think Trump's position is, if the U.S. isn't healthy long term, all of you go down too. So we have to ensure that the U.S. is healthy. My guess is that's what they're thinking.
Excellent. So Trump, he had some comments yesterday in his meeting with Netanyahu concerning China. I believe we have a clip. Could we take that clip and then we can discuss more on the other side?
Against my statement, they put a 34% tariff on above what their ridiculous tariffs were already. And I said, if that tariff isn't removed by tomorrow at 12 o'clock, we're putting a 50% tariff on above the tariffs that we put on. So they've gone for years. They've become a rich country because of people, again, that were in the White House that allowed this to happen.
So, I mean, that is certainly a position of strength. That brings the number up on the tariff to China to over 100%, starting at 12:01 a.m. And in case unless they respond, do you have any predictions? And because this remains a high-profile tit for tat right now, do you think that we will see the market swing in the other direction again?
I love making predictions because they rarely come true. I think we don't
Jim
know
Cramer. Then your predictions never have to.
I've been around Wall Street enough to know if you want to make a lot of money, you make one prediction that works, and then the rest don't matter. But the reality is, China is going to have to come to the table. But in order to keep pushing that, we need Europe to come on board. We need these other countries to come on board. I think China wants to settle this. They don't want the fight either, really, but they cannot afford to be seen as weak. And honor is a big thing in that Communist Party. And, Xi Jinping needs this to look like he's in control. So I think there's a high stakes poker game being played out right now. At the end of the day, the U.S. can survive a trade war with China. They can't survive one with us. So I think we have the cards. I just hope the Chinese don't drag the whole world down going, well, we're going to play tough guy. I think right now the cooler heads should prevail, and the Chinese and the Americans should say, listen, let's equalize our trading deficits as best we can. Let's at least put tariffs that are equal on and let it go. But China shouldn't push this. They won't win in the long run. They think they will, but they won't. And I think the U.S. is going to come back as a manufacturing powerhouse, and that will negate a lot of these problems. But we will see. I mean, the markets are the markets. They've run down, 17%. They ran back up today a ton and then came back down because there's more news. I don't know. I'm going to guess in the long run, the market's going to do just fine. I know, people I know that have their investments there. Just don't panic. Keep it in. The economy gets bigger over time, and it will this time too.
Yeah. The adage of, just hold, just be patient, hold. So as far as Trump's position on tariffs, something that gets, I think, lost in the conversation is what we've seen Trump do before when it comes to any major policy decisions. He almost kind of says the most outlandish thing. Come on, like we've heard him say Canada's going to become the 51st state. We've heard we're going to take over Greenland. Perhaps he means it, but traditionally he says like the biggest thing, the art of the deal, right? So how much weight do you put into this initial offer, I guess, when it comes to tariffs? People are reacting to the major ask. Do you think that we're going to see him maybe make those deals and meet in the middle and pull back?
I absolutely think deals are going to be made. It's been interesting, again, going back to China, not to beat on that, but they pulled out of the TikTok negotiations. And point of fact, my podcast today is all about TikTok and what it means to the global economy. But the Chinese are playing hardball, and they're back, coming back at Trump with everything he's given them. I would suggest in the long run and the intermediate run, it's in their interest to settle. I think they will. But to your point, Trump is at least self-perceived master negotiator. Whether he is or not, we're going to find out, because this is the first time this country has taken this kind of a stand without a military backup. This is all just negotiation, and we'll see how it happens. Now,
a major part of Trump's agenda beyond the tariffs what I see is kind of to balance things out is he wants those tax cuts to remain that he enacted in 2017, and also have money coming in to allow for further tax cuts. Now, reading reports today, it sounds like he's facing some resistance from his own party, at least 10 who are resisting this newest budget. Do you have any thoughts on how we can get to a position of being able to, for Trump being able to fulfill his promises on tax cuts, especially facing so much resistance from even his own party?
There's several components to that, and it's good that you're bringing it up. We've seen some real good things in the last couple of months, by the way. Interest rates have come down nicely. Oil prices are coming down. All that's going to help the economy. But we look at the purists like a Rand Paul, who's come out and just said, I don't buy tariffs. I'm not a tariff guy. I'm a free trader. Go down that, and I won't support it. I respect that, and I understand it. I think Trump's position of let's move everything to an external revenue service as opposed to an internal revenue service, looking back to how the country was founded and paid for, I think it's an interesting idea. I don't know that you could generate $5 or $6 trillion a year doing that. Maybe you can. I think what we have to see is, at worst case, almost a continuation of those tax cuts. I'd like to see tax off Social Security, tax off tips, tax off overtime, some real middle class type benefits for that. And I think if he can start proposing those ideas, and I think come out and start telling the American people, look, this is how much fraud we found in the government. We know it's something like 20%. So there's $1 trillion of our deficit right there that we can get rid of. I think it's conceivable you could start seeing the growth of the economy as well as cuts to the budget balancing it. And that will give him a lot of political capital to go after a tax reorganization like he's talked about.
Now, on the overall economy, what's been interesting for me to observe over these past few years reporting on the economy is exposing that the legacy media time and time again, all while Biden was in office, they were saying, no, we're not having inflation. Oh, inflation's not bad. Even the president up there on the podium saying, oh, it's transitory, or Janet Yellen saying, oh, it's transitory. So much trans talk. Even the inflation is transitory. When real people were feeling it. And then the minute that Trump gets into office, suddenly the legacy media is acknowledging inflation. It's like they didn't even acknowledge its existence under Biden. And now they're like, what's Trump going to do about inflation? Is he going to bring us into recession? Well, some economists say that we've already been in recession under Biden. So what are your thoughts on there? Have we already seen a recession? Is one coming? What do you think?
My thoughts first are there's a reason they call economics the dismal science, because it is as much philosophy as it is mathematics. You've got so many different camps within economics. There are US-centric economists who think what Trump's doing is the best thing in the world. You've got global-centric economists who think it's the biggest boondoggle in the world. Who knows what tomorrow is going to bring for this? I can tell you that we have a lot of history to look at. The markets will recover because the economy will get bigger. I think you look at fundamentals, the capital coming into the country, the idea of deregulating and cutting taxes, all of which is bullish for the underlying economy. And we've seen some of it already happen. New steel plants in Louisiana, new automotive plants. So we've seen some outcomes that say this is working. I think net, I'm cautiously optimistic, especially for the independent business community. I'm cautiously optimistic that the next 3 years will be extremely positive.
Now, mainstream media likes to run with the narrative that this tariff Trump agenda is going to give the highest earners, the billionaires, their tax breaks and leave the working class still suffering. Is there anything fundamental that would point to that being the case? Or, I mean, because what I'm reading, especially if you're bringing jobs back, if you're bringing manufacturing back, I mean, to me, that tells me that the working man, he keeps his job, he gets to produce more. I mean, where are they getting this narrative that this is just to give rich people a break and screw the working class?
Well, clearly they get it from the Bernie Sanders types who are out with fight the oligarchy, right? Well, the oligarchy is the media and the left and the liberal politician. But I think they're just jealous. And I've written in the past about the jealousy economy and how it doesn't work. I mean, take two characters, Elizabeth Warren versus Elon Musk. Who's the hated one? It's Elon. And why? Because he's created tens of thousands of jobs. He's put men in space. He created the electric vehicle market. He's developed incredible new technologies. Starlink provides help and assistance to people around the world. What's Elizabeth Warren ever done? Nothing. She just complains about the maker. And so I think as long as the mainstream media stays on that narrative of if you build it, you're bad, and if you complain about it, you're good, we're always going to have the naysayers who say, well, he has it, I don't, I'm jealous of it, and I'm going to condemn it for everything there is. But there's no economic benefit in stealing money from billionaires. They spend it, they invest it, and they're better capital allocators than governments, always, forevermore, and always will be.
What do you make of, since you brought Elon Musk up, what do you make of Elon Musk and his spat with Peter Navarro, who is advising Trump about these tariffs, the tariff infighting, if you will?
Well, I think it's an overstatement to say it's infighting and a spat. I think, and this is true, this is an administration more so than any in my lifetime where all of the participants seem to get along. I mean, it really is a dynamic that's been rarely seen, because you've got the Secretary of Defense talking to the Secretary of Treasury, talking to the Secretary of Health. They all talk to each other daily. I think there is disagreement on the tariff issue because it is a hard one to swallow. Again, I'm a free trader, but is that the goal? And we're just using this as a negotiation? Probably. I think Elon has his own perspectives on things. He's clearly shown to be a brilliant business mind. I mean, developing PayPal to start and then moving up through Starlink and Tesla and everything else. But again, I go back, there's no real science in the economics world like this. We're looking at saying, will this negotiation be successful? Will we get trade barriers down at the end of the day so that we have free trade? All of us know taxes simply make less of something happen. So the higher you tariff, the less trade you're going to get. Okay, that's a truth. However, if it's a negotiation and we're trying to get to that zero trading restriction, that's a good thing. So I think there's active dialogue in the cabinet. I think it's very high level. It's very assertive. I support it. I'm glad to see they're doing it. I'd love to see more of this kind of transparent dialogue on all administrations, frankly.
Let's talk timeline and how that has an effect on this whole thing. We Americans are not used to having to wait for anything. we have instant gratification everywhere we go, with the internet, fast food, everything's immediate. So perhaps this is one reason why, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, those types were talking about the need for this. This needed to happen. Relooking at trade deficits and trade balance, if you will. They said it way back then, but it's like no one's had the guts to do it because we don't know how long it could take for the effects to be seen in the positive. How long do you think, or would that just be pure speculation? How long do you think Trump has before to make these deals before people are going to get extremely restless?
I think it is some speculation, but we have historical precedents here. If you go back to 1980 and the recession we were having then, the misery index of interest rates, unemployment, and inflation put together, when you look at Paul Volcker coming in and jacking up the interest rates like he did, and the recession that caused in 81 and 82, people quickly said that's the end of the Reagan presidency. And what happened was by 83, it turned around, came back, and then was a bull for 8 years. I think Trump has time here. Clearly, the midterms are going to matter. But going to a purely political discussion, I don't think the Democrats have a message. I hear them criticizing a lot and condemning a lot, but I don't hear a message of hope. You go to the average person in Michigan who lost their job to this global trade movement, they're not going to care if the Democrats just hate Trump. They're going to care that there's a positive plan put out there. And frankly, AOC and Bernie Sanders saying just, eliminate the oligarchs and all as well. That's never going to work. It hasn't worked in history. It's not going to work now. So they've got to come up with something. Otherwise, I think the Republicans could pick up seats in the midterms. that extends Trump's time frame. But I think prior to that, you're going to see this economy start to show signs. As I said, there are a number of very positive signs in the economy right now. They're not getting picked up by most of the media. But when you look at the structure of the jobs numbers, this capital inflow, the reduction in interest rates and the cost that reduces, the lowering oil prices, we're below $60 a barrel, which means prices at the pump are coming down. That will generate through the economy a price moderation. And so I really think in the nearer term, we're going to see some positive come out of this. The market will be what the market is. It'll just be there and it'll go up when it wants to. But I think from the economy as an underlying asset, I think our economy is getting stronger by the day. Hey, there you go. How's that for a prognostication that I'll end up shooting myself for?
No, I think it's a good one, and something that we can hold on to. And I mean, let's make it personal though. What do you think that we should be doing? I mean, we're talking about big picture things. What do you think people should be doing as far as their own personal portfolios? I've been speaking a lot about this issue of a lot of people that thought they were diversified aren't truly diversified. If they're diversified in the stock market, then you can see how well that works, and been talking about the importance of asset diversification, some investments outside of the market and things like that. Do you have any advice or things that you want to put out there as far as what we should be doing personally during this time?
I strongly suggest people watch television programs like yours. I think it keeps perspective on things. In terms of overall asset allocation, look, I believe that the U.S. economy will get bigger over the next 10 or 20 years. That tells me I want to be in the markets. And I think the best way to do it is through an S&P ETF or an exchange-traded fund. There's no cost going in. There's no transaction cost. There's no slippage. You don't pay taxes on it until you sell it. I think to have an S&P ETF is a good way to play the U.S. economy. I would add to that the Morgan Stanley World Index, which gives you exposure to the globe. Again, you can do it through an ETF, so there's no cost. I think those kinds of things help you play in the economy. But realize that's a 5 to 10 year forward look. You're not going to be able to say, well, in a year, what's it going to do? Nobody knows. But I think over a 5-10 year period, you can say, yes, these get bigger. There are a lot of dynamics to that. Clearly, technology, which I'm heavily involved in, is changing the nature of our economy. As we move toward a tokenized economy and what I've called the idea capitalism of the next generation, that's changing how things look. But fundamentally, the economies will get bigger regardless of how that happens, whether it's through robotics or it's through consumers or however it happens, it will get bigger. And I think people can rest assured that with adequate diversification through some bonds, which give you exposure to debt, equity, both U.S. and international, those things tend to play out over time.
Yeah, absolutely. So, great advice as far as that goes is about how we can look at this personally. Speaking of personally, you have started your own podcast to talk on these subjects, and tell me about that, how you decided to do that, and how often we can expect to see those come out.
Well, I didn't decide to. I was pushed into it, frankly. There were several people who came to me and said, Steve, we talk to you all the time. We love talking to you. We think the world needs to hear your voice. And I said, I don't really care. And I don't want my name in front of everything. But they got me to do it. So we're doing 2 of them a week now up at stevebeeman.com. And together with that, we have articles going on Substack. We may move to 3 days a week or even more. It depends how much people want to get involved. I really feel for the younger people in our society, the Gen Xers and the millennials. They really across the board feel like they won't live as well as their parents, and they won't if we don't fix this economy. Again, $36 trillion in debt, $2 trillion in deficits, and $1 trillion trade deficit. That is not going to bode well for the people that are in that 18 to 30 age bracket. So a lot of the reason I did the podcast was for them.
Excellent.
Oh, there you go.
And so where can we see that at? stevebeeman.com. And again, there are episodes up there. Yeah, we've got stuff, as you can see, we talked about Doge. Is it legal and is it a con artist job or is it a real thing? I looked at Social Security and the actual kind of facts behind Social Security. Is it a Ponzi scheme or is it a legitimate program? So we've looked at a lot of questions that people send me and say, hey, I really want you to look into this. But it's my pleasure, and I enjoy talking with people like you because it opens the dialogue for what I think of as a civil dialogue. Yes. Yeah, and something that people are hungry for right now is some guidance on that from someone they can trust. All right. Well, Steve, thank you so much for coming on with me. And we look forward to hearing your insights in the future, as I'm sure this is going to remain a topic for quite some time.
Well, I thank you very much and wish you the very best.
You as well. And as long as we are talking about personal responsibility, make sure that you're prepared for anything. We're going to have Jason Nelson. He is the owner of Prepper All Naturals. He's going to join us on Thursday. He was going to do it today. We had some technical issues. So he's going to join us on Thursday to talk about all the things that they're doing. He's a Marine, a rancher right here in Texas that keeps the meat clean and also shelf stable. Think about that. So watch this and I'll be right back on the other side. Let them eat bugs, they say, or lab-grown meat, or worse. No, we want our real beef. And we need to get free from the rising costs because the prices are skyrocketing. So you need to go to klbeef.com, stock up on all American beef from ranches in Texas, from Prepper All Naturals. We don't want the mystery meat. This meat is no mRNA jabs ever. It's freeze-dried, stored in Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers for maximum shelf life. We're talking 10 plus years without refrigeration. We're not talking jerky. We're talking about something you can just soak in water for 15 minutes, ready to eat. And these are premium cuts. New York strip, tenderloin, sirloin, chuck. Just use promo code KLB15 for 15% off your order. All right, welcome back. You know, I've always said that with this show, Get Free with Kristi Leigh, I wanted to keep things positive. We have so much negativity in the news, so I wanted to balance things out. We always have things that we can be grateful for that are happening. And I mean, a lot of great news coming out of that press briefing earlier today. Not only are they remaining strong in the tariffs resolution, the resolve there to carry this forward and fix the imbalance between ourselves and other countries, making sure that they pay their fair share. He's staying strong with that objective. But we also got some great news coming out of SCOTUS, despite Amy Coney Barrett being a traitor again and siding with the liberal judge activists, trying to say that Trump in some way couldn't use the illegal alien act to deport the Tren de Agua. That's so hard to say. Those gang members that he got some resistance from activist judges, but they confirmed that he is able to use that Foreign Enemies Act. And so all speed ahead when it comes to deportations, making our country safer and operating more efficiently. So we can certainly be grateful for that as well. It sounds like 70 countries are coming to the table to come and make those negotiations. Now, I do think, as I spoke with Steve Beeman earlier before, that there is going to be kind of a hidden timeline when it comes to these things, that these negotiations, they need to act quickly. They need to happen quickly because people in this country seem to be too easy to manipulate. If they have to wait too long for things to change, then you might lose them to a certain degree. So hopefully they can have those things happen quickly. I also want to encourage viewers to reach out to your representatives. Trump is already getting some pretty major pushback when it comes to his agenda and tax cuts. That's a huge aspect of this, for all this to work, is he made a promise that he's going to cut these taxes, anything from no tax on tips, to no tax on Social Security. And to make that happen, this tariff agenda needs to happen, and also approval of the budget. And so he's getting some resistance there. So make sure your representatives hear from you. Tell them to hop on board. Let Trump do what he didn't get to do the first time. His first run was so impeded by the opposition spying on him, the fake impeachments, all of that. So he hasn't really gotten a fair shot at this. Let's give him his fair shot in what he wants to see happening to give us prosperity and America first, make America wealthy again. So So want to remind you to please support the sponsors, klbeef.com, christyoilboom.com, and also you can go to My Pillow, which now you can get free shipping with no minimum purchase. So now's the best time to do it. You can go to mypillow.com/KL, use promo code KL. This is another case where Mike Lindell, the box stores didn't come through. They had an order, they loaded the trucks up, and then they didn't come through because of the constant attacks on Mike Lindell. But he's going to pass those savings that he was giving them onto you. No middleman. So take advantage of these great deals. And also on top of it, get free shipping. Just make sure you use promo code KL. I want to make sure I share the verse of the day, and let's pull that up. Here it is. Know also that wisdom is like honey for you. If you find it, there is a future hope for you, and your hope will not be cut off. That's Proverbs 24:14. Wisdom, like honey. If you find it, there's a future hope for you, and your hope will not be cut off. We could all use some wisdom, and thankfully, the Bible says that we are always able to freely ask for it. So make sure you're doing that. I have started my Raw Faith show up again on a more consistent basis. They're on Locals. Make sure you go to locals.com, search for me, Kristi Leigh, or you can go to kristileightv.locals.com. That's kristileightv.locals.com. Every day at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. I am on there to give a brief devotion, dig into God's word with y'all. It's an opportunity to worship, fellowship, and do it quickly. Quick break for your day. Just hop on there on Locals, support my work by subscribing there on Locals, and join me for Raw Faith, a short devotional show each day, Monday through Friday. All right. Thanks for joining me. And don't forget to spread the word and share with friends. Get free with Kristi Leigh now on Lindell TV.